A bloody, mangled finger, still bearing shreds of a worn white glove, was washing down the exterior drainage channel of my truck's trailer, pushed along by the rain. I never dared to drive alone at midnight again. The incident happened a month ago, when I was driving alone through the dark woods of Virginia, running a short-haul night shift for a regional logistics company. I'm Leo, 28, and I rent a small apartment just outside Richmond. To save up for community college, I took the night job nobody else wanted, driving a battered cargo truck, hauling frozen meat and produce from the interstate depot to dozens of small, remote grocery stores in the dead of night. It was a Wednesday night. The moon was hidden by heavy clouds, and the roads were slick. I had finished my second-to-last stop and was heading back along an obscure backwoods road. The stretch of highway seemed tailor-made for a horror movie. Dense pine forests lined both sides, and the air was thick with the smell of wet earth and pine needles. Other than the engine's roar and the drone of the radio host, it was deathly silent. At 3:45 a.m., just after turning past a massive, graffiti-covered old water tower, my headlights caught something unnatural by the roadside. It was a wrecked Ford pickup, its front end smashed in. But what truly froze me was the figure standing next to it, a person dressed in a filthy clown suit. The classic yellow and blue striped overalls looked stark and obscene under the truck's high beams. Their face was painted with an exaggerated, gaping smile that looked less like makeup and more like blood, stretched back to the ears. The figure was completely motionless, standing rigidly like an abandoned mannequin. He was staring directly into my cab. My mind went blank, adrenaline surged. I slammed the accelerator, and the truck rattled as it sped past. I didn't dare check my mirror, but that grin, that unnatural, overly wide smile, contorted as if by pain, was imprinted on my mind like a flash photograph. About 20 minutes later, I pulled into a small, 24-hour truck stop. I jumped out and splashed cold water on my face in the restroom, trying to wash the image away. When I returned to my truck, ready to leave, I saw it. A Polaroid photograph tucked under my windshield wiper. The photo's edge was stained with dark, greasy smudges, and at the center was that clown's face. Closer and clearer than I had seen on the road. His smile was more menacing, and his eyes, they weren't crazed, but possessed a cold, judgmental malice. I could even count the yellow spots on his teeth. My hands trembling, I crumpled the photo and tossed it into a trash bin. It was a clear provocation, a declaration of presence. It made me feel sick to have been chosen. I got back on the road, my heart beating like a drum. About 10 minutes into the drive, my phone rang. An unknown number. I hesitated, then answered. There was no greeting, no static, just a low, gurgling laugh on the other end. It sounded like a throat clogged with shards of glass or thick, viscous fluid, intermittent and full of pure malevolence. I shouted into the phone, "Who is this? Stop playing games." The laughter didn't stop. It continued for a full minute, then with a sharp click, the call disconnected. My palms were drenched in cold sweat. I pushed the speed limit, gripping the steering wheel tightly. I just wanted to stop and hide. Then I heard it. Clang! A heavy, metal-on-metal thud came from the roof of the truck, like someone dropping a thick sheet of iron. I flinched, my scalp prickling with dread. Clang! HSSS. The sound came again, this time accompanied by a screeching, ear-splitting friction, like fingernails on a chalkboard, and it was much closer to my cab. I realized the clown had somehow climbed onto the roof of my truck, and he was crawling toward me. I swerved violently, making the truck sway on the road, hoping the momentum would throw him off. But the noise only paused for a brief moment before resuming, right over my head. Next came a sharp crack, like plastic or glass being ripped apart. My truck had a small sunroof I sometimes used for ventilation. I looked up to see a massive crack rapidly spreading along the edge of the glass. I felt a blast of cold air rush in. A white-gloved, dirt-caked hand pushed through the crack, slowly, sickeningly, reaching to grope for the inside door lock. Fear peaked at that moment, but instantly, the adrenaline overwhelmed it, triggering the most primal survival instinct. This was no prank. This was an intruder attempting to harm or kidnap me. I had no time to think. I entered a sequence of chaotic, panicked action. I gripped the wheel tightly with my left hand, steering the truck toward the guardrail. My breathing was ragged, my heart was a runaway machine in my chest. I remembered my heavy stainless steel coffee thermos, which I had been using to stay awake, sitting in the cup holder. I snatched the cup and, without taking my eyes off the road, swung it with every ounce of strength I had directly at the groping hand in the sunroof. I heard a wet, muffled impact, like a balloon bursting. The hand recoiled instantly and awkwardly. A very low, quick hiss of pain came from above, sounding more like an injured animal than a human. That moment was the decisive one. I didn't look up. I didn't dare. I only knew I had to escape the distance. I floored the accelerator, and the truck roared as it shot forward. I listened to the wind howling through the broken sunroof until my heartbeat and the engine were the only sounds I could distinguish. I stopped at the next large town and called the police. When they arrived, they found pry marks on my roof and sunroof and some greasy brown residue. They checked the original scene but found no clown suit, blood, or footprints near the wrecked pickup. After many questions, they recorded the incident as attempted malicious mischief. They left, and I cleaned the truck like a zombie. While clearing the passenger seat, I made a discovery that chilled my blood. The Polaroid photo I had crumpled and thrown away had returned. It was pressed flat beneath my seat, waiting for me to find it. I smoothed it out with shaking hands. The clown still bore that immense grin, but now the edge of the photograph was spotted with dried, dark brown stains. It looked like blood. I never drove night shifts again. I quit my job. I took the damaged thermos home and hid it in my garage like a terrible secret. I could never completely wash off the stain on the cup. To this day, although my truck has been repaired, the drainage channel on the side of the trailer consistently accumulates a sticky residue mixed with white fibers and dark brown smears. It's the physical evidence of my counterattack, a sickening reminder. The clown lost a part of himself, and his residue remains on my truck. I know I escaped that night, but that truck, now carrying a piece of the clown's flesh and blood, an echo of his twisted laugh, sits in my garage. It's no longer my tool. It's a testament to my contamination and an inescapable piece of evidence. When I finally washed the blood off my face in the sheriff's station bathroom, I noticed the small puncture mark on my neck, right below my ear, like a livestock tag, and branded just beneath it were the numbers 0718. That night, by the Nebraska cornfields, I smelled burning feathers. It all started with the smell. My name is Kyla. I was a third-year vet student at Iowa State, focusing on large animals. It was July, and I was driving to a ranch internship in Colorado. That meant cutting across Nebraska at night. I didn't mind. I liked the solitude, the way the road unspooled in the monotonous cone of my high beams. It was just after 1 a.m. I was on a Tulane County highway, a black ribbon cutting through an endless ocean of corn. The sky was vast and starless, the radio was pure static, and my cell service had died hours ago. It was just the hum of my '09 Civic and the beams slicing the dark. I felt like the only person awake in the world, and at the time that felt safe. The smell was the first warning. It was overwhelming, filling the car almost instantly. A gut-wrenching mix of burnt feathers, acrid ammonia, like rotting urine, and a coppery metallic tang like old blood. I slammed the air recirculation button, but it was too late. The stench was in. I covered my nose and mouth with my sleeve, my stomach heaving. Then I saw the truck. It was right in front of me, a massive, rust-covered, double-decker livestock hauler, its body a sick, dark red in the moonlight. It was going impossibly slow, maybe 20 miles an hour. Holding my breath against the stench, I flicked on my signal and pulled into the left lane to pass. As my headlights swept across the grimy aluminum trailer, my heart stopped. The ventilation slats on the trailer were wide. Through the gaps, I didn't see cattle. I didn't see pigs. I saw people. Dozens of them, packed in tight on both levels, standing like sardines. They were motionless, pale, and staring blankly straight ahead. I saw a man in a torn t-shirt, an old woman with gray hair. In the brief flash of my headlights, none of them even blinked. They just stood. My foot slammed the accelerator. I didn't care about speeding. I didn't care about anything. I just wanted to be away from that thing. My mind was racing. Was it human trafficking? A cult? Was I hallucinating from fatigue? No, it was too real. Why weren't they moving? I pushed my little Civic to 100, my heart hammering, trying to claw its way out of my throat. About 5 miles later, my car sputtered. The engine coughed, a reluctant, choking sound. The dashboard lights flickered wildly, and then everything went black. The engine died. The power steering vanished. I fought the wheel, managing to coast to a stop on the gravel shoulder. Silence, utter and complete, save for the shush of cornstalks in the night wind. I turned the key, frantic. Nothing. Just a single, defeated click. I grabbed my phone. No service. I was stranded. A sitting duck. I sat in the dark for maybe 10 minutes, my initial panic settling into a cold, paralyzing dread. Then I heard it. The low, bestial rumble of a diesel engine. The groan of metal. I saw the two dim, yellow headlights in my rearview mirror growing closer. It was the livestock hauler. It slowed, pulling to a stop about 20 yards behind my car. It didn't kill its engine. The idling rumble was a physical threat in the quiet night. The cab door shrieked open. A tall silhouette stepped out. A man, easily over 6 feet, wearing a dark, stained apron. Like a butcher. He wasn't carrying a gun. He was holding a cattle prod, long and tipped with metal. He started walking toward me. His boots made a slow, rhythmic crunch on the gravel. He was in no hurry. His gait was heavy, deliberate. I slammed the central lock button. Click. I scrambled from the driver's side over to the passenger seat, as if a few extra inches of car would make a difference. He reached my window. He didn't try the handle. He just stared in at me. His face was broad and impassive, his eyes hidden in the shadow of a greasy baseball cap. He raised the prod and tapped the glass. Tap, tap, tap. Get away! I screamed, my voice raw with terror. I've called the cops. They're on their way. He tilted his head slightly, as if confused by the noise I was making. Then, with no change in expression, he raised the prod high and brought it down with full force. Thwack! The glass held. He seemed annoyed by this. He raised it again, putting his entire body into the swing. Crash! Tempered glass exploded inward, showering me in a rain of tiny cubes. I screamed, throwing my arms over my face. He didn't reach in for me. He calmly extended the prod through the shattered window, the electric tines at the end sparking with a BZZT of blue light. He wasn't aiming for me. He was aiming for the console. He poked the button for the central unlock. Click. All 4 doors unlocked. At that exact moment, I heard another sound from behind me. The rear gate of the truck was being lowered, a grating screech of metal on metal. A heavy ramp slammed onto the asphalt, and then a sound. Not footsteps. A dull, rhythmic, hollow thud-thud-thud, like heavy hooves on pavement. The cargo was being unloaded. The butcher opened my car door. The stench of burnt feathers and manure hit me like a physical blow, making me gag. He grabbed my arm. His hand was a steel claw, his strength unreal. This is it, I thought. I'm dead. He's gonna put me in the truck with those things. He started dragging me out. My vet bag. It was on the floor mat. My free hand scrabbled inside it, past a stethoscope, past gauze rolls, until my fingers closed around something familiar. A 20 cubic centimeters syringe, still in its sterile wrapper. I tore it free, ripped the cap off the needle. As he hauled me onto the gravel, I used every ounce of strength I had and jammed the long needle deep into the side of his thick neck. I slammed the plunger down, emptying 20 ccs of air straight into his vein. An air embolism. That should kill him. He stopped moving. He slowly turned his head, looking down at the syringe sticking out of his neck. He didn't even flinch. He just grunted, a low, annoyed sound, as if I were a mosquito. He casually plucked the syringe out and tossed it to the ground. He grabbed me with both hands. I could see the cargo now, shambling toward us in the high beams of the truck. Their faces were human, but their eyes were vacant, docile, like cattle. From the knees down, their legs were thick, hairy, and ended in gnarled, split hooves. The butcher was strong, but he was a man. At least, I prayed he was. With the last dregs of adrenaline and terror in my system, I brought my knee up as hard as I possibly could, right between his legs. This time he reacted. He let out a sharp, whistling gasp. His grip on my arms loosened for just 1 second. It was enough. I ripped myself free, scrambled to my feet, and ran. Not down the road. I ran the other way, launching myself headfirst into the towering, impenetrable wall of corn. The leaves cut at my face and arms like razors, but I didn't care. I just ran, clawing through the stalks, pushing deeper into the darkness. I heard a guttural roar of pure rage behind me. And then I heard the thud thud thud. The hooves. They were following me. Into the corn. I ran until my lungs were on fire and my legs were jelly. I fell, crawled, got up, and fell again in the chest-high maze. I could hear them moving around me, the sound of hooves in the dirt, sometimes close, sometimes far. They were hunting me. Finally, I collapsed, burying myself under a tangle of stalks, covering my own mouth with a clump of dirt to stifle my breathing. I lay there, shaking in the dark and the stench, until the first, faint, gray light of dawn touched the sky. I don't know how long I ran. It was nearly 7 a.m. when I stumbled out of the cornfield onto a different road, covered in mud, blood, and scratches. A farmer in a pickup truck found me. He took me to the nearest county sheriff's station. Of course, they didn't believe my story. Not the hooves, not the human-faced things. They found my car. The window was smashed and the battery was completely dead. A mechanic later said it looked like it had been fried by a massive electrical surge. The interior was full of dirt and manure. But the truck, the butcher, the hoof prints? Nothing. The official report concluded I'd had a terrifying encounter with a deranged vagrant, and that fatigue had muddled my memory. They let me clean up in the station bathroom. I stood at the mirror, splashing cold water on the cuts on my face. That's when I saw it. Just below my left ear, on the soft skin of my neck, was a fresh, red puncture wound. It was small, precise, a perfect circle. It didn't hurt, and branded into the skin just below it, so tiny I almost missed it, were 4 microscopic numbers. I dropped out of the internship. I sold the car. I live in a big city now, on the 5th floor of an apartment building. I don't drive at night anymore. The police report says I was the victim of a random, violent assault. But I know the truth. I wasn't assaulted. I was processed. I was tagged. And sometimes, late at night when the city gets quiet, I swear I can still smell burning feathers. That night, I was driving east on the I-10 through West Texas, that stretch of road that feels like it goes on forever. Exhaustion was a heavy blanket wrapped around me. It was just past 1 in the morning. A fine, cold rain was falling, and I'd been driving for 10 straight hours. I needed to pull over, but the next decent stop was still miles away. I pulled into a small, desolate roadside rest stop for a bathroom break. Besides my 18-wheeler, the only other vehicle was a beat-up Chevy pickup parked in the far corner. Just as I was climbing back into the cab to start the engine, a figure emerged from the rain and knocked on my window. He looked young, early 20s maybe, thin, and wearing a thick, wet, dark jacket. His voice was low and almost drowned out by the rain. "Hey buddy, my ride broke down. Could you give me a lift?" Just to the next town going north. Every instinct told me to say no. A trucker doesn't pick up strangers in the middle of the night. But I was tired and cold, and he looked desperate. I figured it was just to the next exit. I unlocked the passenger door. "Get in." He climbed in, shut the door, and did so with an unsettling quietness. I offered him a towel, but he just politely waved it away. He sat stiffly, hands shoved deep into his jacket pockets. The cab filled with the smell of wet dirt and cheap tobacco. I asked if he wanted to hear some music, and he just shook his head. We drove in silence for about 30 minutes. That's when the unease started to settle in. He kept his head down, never looked at me, and never glanced out at the rushing darkness. What truly chilled me was when I quickly glanced over and noticed the skin showing around his ankle. It was clearly chafed and red, like he'd been restrained with rope. Even worse, his hands, still buried in his pockets, seemed to be fidgeting with or gripping a small, hard object. I tried to break the silence. "So, what town are you headed to exactly?" He lifted his head slowly. His eyes looked vacant in the faint green glow of the dashboard lights. He paused for a drawn-out second before rasping out, "North." The tone was flat, like he was stating a non-existent destination. In that moment, my gut dropped. He was not a regular hitchhiker. I made an excuse about a tire feeling low on air and pulled the rig over to the shoulder, flicking on the hazards. "I need to check the tires." "You don't have to get out, it's freezing," I said, opening my door and jumping down. I pretended to inspect the back tires, but my eyes were fixed on the reflection in my side mirror, watching the passenger cab. He sat motionless, like a statue. Then I saw it. Under the passenger seat, I had a zipped storage compartment where I kept maps and snacks. I watched his hand slowly emerge from his pocket, holding a tiny tool like a surgical blade. He leaned forward and, with agonizing slowness, began meticulously slicing the fabric where the compartment met the floor mat. He wasn't after my wallet. He was trying to access whatever was hidden beneath the seat. My heart hammered against my ribs. I remembered my friend's stern warning. "Don't open the trailer and don't stop." I knew there was something in this truck worth more than my life, and this man was here to take it, no matter what. I took a deep breath, fighting to keep the tremor out of my voice as I got back in and shut the door. "It's fine, just low pressure. We can keep going." I forced a smile and looked over at him. "But now, you need to get out." He slowly raised his head. The vacancy in his eyes was gone, replaced by a cold, predatory focus. He didn't speak, but his hand came fully out of his pocket. And it was no longer a small blade, but a screwdriver, its tip filed into a razor-sharp point. He gave me no time to react. He lunged. I roared, instinctively ramming my right elbow into the side of his face. In the cramped cab, the steering wheel was my only shield. He bounced off the door but lunged back immediately, the screwdriver aimed right for my eye. I twisted away, but the point sank into my left arm. A searing pain shot through me. Blood instantly soaked my jacket. Ignoring the pain, I gripped his wrist with my left hand, using my body weight to pin him against the door. My legs thrashed wildly until I hit the clutch. I slammed the shifter into neutral and floored the gas pedal. The engine roared, deafening us both. Using every ounce of strength, I shoved him backward. In that split second of recoil, I tore off my seatbelt, flung open the driver's door, and jumped. I tumbled onto the wet shoulder, rolling several times. I heard the 18-wheeler roar past me. I lay there in the rain and watched my truck, carrying the silent demon, veer wildly across the highway and smash through the guardrail. A moment of screeching metal and thunderous impact followed as the rig plummeted down the embankment, then silence. Clutching my bleeding arm, I stumbled and ran half a mile in the dark until I found a lit sign and called the police. The police and rescue teams arrived. They recovered the hitchhiker's body. He had died on impact. But what truly unsettled me was what the police showed me in my truck's wreckage. They pointed out the crudely cut hole beneath the passenger seat. Through the slice, they'd pulled out a small metal safe, wrapped repeatedly in duct tape. The police opened the safe. Inside were not drugs or money, but a thick stack of yellowed personal documents and dozens of photographs of me. One photo was even from 7 years ago, smiling in a different truck. The lead detective looked at me, his voice low. He wasn't a random hitchhiker, pal. He was sent for this box, but his real target wasn't the contents. He handed me a piece of paper, recovered from the dead man's jacket. It had a single sentence, written in red ink. "Clean him up. You know too much, 7 years." I watched my own blood drip onto the paper, watching my name being highlighted on an old photograph. I began to understand that my temporary assignment wasn't about freight at all. 7 years ago, I must have seen something or heard something. They hadn't forgotten. They had just been waiting for the perfect moment to set the trap. That night, I didn't run into a ghost or a monster. I ran into a much worse kind of terror, a cold, calculated 7-year-long plan for cleanup that was ready to be executed. And I had only just barely survived.